Hi everybody, welcome back. Tony from Shinsho Yoga. And today I want to talk about what is yoga. So if you go off what you see in social media today, you probably think yoga is some type of unusual exercise that incorporates stretching and gymnastics and contortionism and is meant only for people who are probably in very good shape, or what I hear all the time, very flexible, very limber. That's not what yoga is. That's not what yoga is at all. Yoga is for everyone. And yoga, what it is in a modern sense, how it is today in the West, is a recent innovation of it in the way it's done. And it's been very Americanized, very westernized, and to becoming just this kind of usually vigorous, stretchy workout. Somewhat more like, as we would say, we call gym yoga in the industry, or sometimes yoga lattes. Yoga at its core is meditation. Yoga is a spirituality. It's just that simple. That's what it is. Yoga dates back 5,000 to 7,000 years. Not exact time, because you're going back to a time when kind of predating some history. So somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000 years ago in India. And it was the colloquial, the spirituality of the people. Not religion, right? Because religion was very structured and dogmatic. Spirituality. And yoga throughout the country of India was different depending on where you were. Again, you have to think back at the time it was created. The big difference between the northern part of the country and the southern part of the country, and to get from one to the other would like be traveling across to the other side of the world. If you go back 5,000 to 7,000 years, infrastructure, there's no roads, there's no internet, there's no phones, there's no cars. So in all of the different towns that yoga developed in, you had different styles of yoga that came out. Some of these styles of yoga had a physical practice in it known as asana, which is where we get our modern vinyasa and modern practice of yoga from, but many did not. What yoga was, again, was a spirituality. And what the ancient yogis were looking to do was to release the spiritual power they had. They felt that the physical body encumbered the spiritual. So what they looked to do was burn away as much of the physical as they could to be able to release the spiritual. These, of course, were the ascetics, right? So these are the people that would live in a cave and live on a diet of maybe a bowl of rice a day, and would spend their whole day in meditation, or if they had a physical practice, the asana, would spend their hours in postures, right? So if you've ever seen those commercials where they show some stereotypical Indian guru in a cave, standing on his head for hours at a time, very thin, not eating very much, and only wearing some traditional white garb wrapped around them. That's not too far from the truth at the time. That were the ascetics. These were the people that lived the full, devout, yogic life. And there were multiple different things that they would do to try to reach this spiritual power, this removing of the physical and becoming the spiritual being that they were meant to be, but on this physical plane. Right? Meditation, of course, being the core of it, and then, of course, the asana and certain practices, the physical practice working with it. But everyday people also did this practice, right? They didn't necessarily all have to live as ascetics. They didn't have to live this lifestyle of renouncement and living in, away from people and only living on whatever to keep them sustained. There were everyday practices for people, of meditation, of different types of ritual and different practices they had of yoga to be able to live a spiritual life. And that's what yoga is. It's spirituality, and at the base core of it is meditation. Right? Now, you may say, well, how do we get to where we are today, where you go to your local gym and there's someone up there in skin tight pants doing things with their body that you don't feel you could ever do? You have to look at the history of yoga, right? So if you go back to around the 1600s, at the time when the British are starting to begin their colonization of India, the most prominent school of yoga in India at the time is Hatha Yoga, right? That's the style that I teach, and that is the most prominent one in our modern culture, at least what it's based off of. Hatha became the most prominent school. Like I had said, there were many schools of yoga, but that one had really gained the most popularity throughout India. And the British, as all colonizers do, tried to wipe out the culture, right? And they burned a majority of the books that the Indian people had of their traditions, many of the books on yoga. And they were forbidden from practicing their original practice because they think they were heathen, heathen religions and things like that. It wasn't until the late 1800s that a man by the name of Krishnamacharya, during the resurgence of Indian independence, wanted to bring back yoga. But you're talking, 200 so years of oppression by the British. And they didn't have much to go on. And all that Krishnamacharya was able to find was one text on Hatha Yoga that had a book of postures, the asana. That's all he found, was this book of postures. So what he decided to do was take these postures, and there was no directions on what to do with these postures at the time, right? He decided to link them together into a flow, a vinyasa, as a way to be able to invigorate the body. And he began training people how to do this, and went around India, right, giving demonstrations and starting yoga schools to bring back the practice of yoga. From that, he had many famous students, one of them by the name of B.K.S. Iyengar. If you've ever heard of Iyengar Yoga, he was one of Krishnamacharya's students. Another one is a man by the name of Pattabhi Jois. Pattabhi Jois is the founder of Ashtanga Yoga, right? Another style. These all stem from Hatha Yoga, from Krishnamacharya and what he could find and to create it. And then with it traveling over here to America, yoga initially traveled to America with a man by the name of Yogananda in the 1920s. Now, he didn't teach this style that Krishnamacharya did. He had more of a spiritual style of yoga that he brought over. He brought over Kriya Yoga. And he had a lot of issues with people in teaching it here, and was very popular at first, and then some people got very wary of him, and he ran into all types of issues. It's a whole nother discussion on Yogananda. But from there, the other styles of yoga during the 1960s started to be able to come through into America. Iyengar came here, people such as that, and brought the modern asana, the modern vinyasa to America. And then from here, like anything else that happens when it comes to the West, it starts to get, well, in any culture, it begins to get diluted and mixed with the culture that's here. And our American culture of this sports-driven, competitive style of physical expression, the practice of yoga started to somewhat de-evolve down into what we see a lot of today being represented is just this kind of intense physical practice that includes stretching and maybe some chanting here and there, and maybe a talk or some guided meditation. And this is not to attack modern yoga, but being in the industry, I know what I see, and I often feel it's heavily misrepresented. Yoga is for everyone, right? It is an opportunity in the most basic sense for self-care, for you to take care of your body, right? For you to take care of yourself. One of the common concepts in spirituality is you can't communicate with the divine if you can't see yourself properly. How are you going to see God if you can't see yourself? Right? So yoga is a time for you to be able to take for your body, to be able to do what you need to do for you, to get healthy, to not judge yourself, to be present in the moment. And at the core of that is the meditative aspect, that breath aspect. So yoga, albeit that it looks like a exercise, is really a meditation, and again, a spirituality. And it is meant for everyone. It is not meant just for what you see in social media. So that's a very quick and very abbreviated version of what is yoga, and as we go along in more of my videos, I'll get more and more into it. But I want to give you at least a little bit to understand what modern yoga is and where it comes from and what you should be looking for it, at least how I see it and how I teach it. So, thanks again for watching. Namaste.